as you speak, pick up the microphone, make sure it's green so that people on the phone can hear everything that. Thank you for coming. As usual, we're going to start just doing introductions around the room. I think we have a few people that haven't been here before, so that's exciting. I'm Kelly Cole, and I'm the director of the Broadband Outreach Center here in GoEd. And I want to introduce my new boss, Ginger Chen, and she just joined GoEd as the managing director of Urban and Rural Services. Is that the right?
Yeah,
correct?
Urban and Rural Business Services. Yeah.
And so, do you want to do an introduction?
Yeah, absolutely.
That'd be great.
So thank you for having me in this meeting. It's my first meeting. I've been with GoEd now for about 3 weeks. I came here from Applied Technology College, where I was the vice president at the technical college. I was there for about 11 years. And accepted the assignment here, and I'm excited for all the changes, and I'm really excited to learn about all the great work that's going on in this room. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Can we turn on microphones while we do introductions?
Tell me your name again.
Oh, sure. My name is Ginger Chen, C-H-I-N-N.
All right. Thank you.
You bet.
Okay, can you turn on the microphones, and then we'll start with Kira.
Hi, I'm Kira Slauson. I represent the Utah Rural Telecom Association.
Shauna Derbyshire, Utah State Office, BLM, Flint Lead.
Jared Anderson with Emory Telecom and with URTA.
Brock Johansson with Emory Telecom and URTA.
Lynn Yoakum with Utah Department of Transportation.
Kobe Zvanova, School of Computing at the University of Utah.
Saxon Nybar with Americom Technology.
Trent Bengert with Americom Technology.
Bill Duncan, Utah Division of Public Utilities.
Jack Walkenhurst with All West Communications and URTA.
Dave Edmonds with Utah Communications Authority.
Jennifer Summers with CenturyLink. My name is Sharon Bertelson with Ballard Farr.
Douglas Meredith with URTA.
Dennis Sampson, Utah Education and Telehealth Network.
Ray Timothy, Utah Education Telehealth Network.
Good morning. My name is David Tejan. I'm with Rocky Mountain West Telecom. Between design and construction, there's engineering. That's what we do.
Morning. I'm Gordon Coles with the Utah Communications Authority.
And actually, why don't you just pass the microphone around the back?
Mike Flynn with EDC Utah.
I'm Max Backlund. I'm also with EDC Utah.
I'm Brian Christensen with Horrocks Engineers.
Rick Gates for the State Board of Education.
Keith Price, USDA Rural Development.
Len Beecher with Go Fiber. Brian Marriott, Probst Electric, Quanta Services.
Dave Ryan with Strata Networks.
John Bingham with Strata Networks.
Bert Granberg with the State of Utah's GIS Office, AGRC.
Jason Morgan, Zayo, formerly Electric Lightwave.
Quint Timmons, State of Utah Rural Planning Group.
Aubrey Larson, Rural Planning Group.
Good morning, Angie Welling with Google Fiber.
Jim Stewart with the Utah Education and Telehealth Network.
Kevin Dutt with the same Utah Telehealth Network.
And then do we have anybody on the phone that would like to introduce themselves?
Sure. Sabrina Scott from UATN is here.
Can you speak a little bit louder? We can't quite hear you.
Sabrina Scott from UATN is here.
I can't hear you, but if you want to send me a quick email, then I'll add you to the list of people that were listening into the meeting. Well, great.
Dean
Well,
Cox.
thank you. This is a great
Dean
turnout
Cox
today.
from Washington County.
Ginger. So we have a lot of companies that are doing broadband services along state groups that are coordinating on different projects.
Doesn't sound like she
get
can.
that flavor. You have a lot of both private and public sector people in the room, and we have actually quite a few people that have come up from rural Utah, from different rural telecom companies that are joining us. So it's great. I just want to give a quick update. As many of you know, I was just selected to be the vice chair of the FCC's Broadband Deployment Advisory Committee, which, thank you. Thank you. So I was really surprised to be selected for that position, but when we had done the nomination, we had talked a lot about this advisory council, and I think that's why I got picked, is because of the coordination that we've done here. We had our first meeting in D.C. about a week and a half ago. The meetings will be quarterly, and then there will also be 5 working groups that are working on model codes for cities, streamlining federal permitting recommendations. So it's designed to be recommendations for the FCC, and so it's very early in the process. We mostly did introductions. Former Congressman Jim Matheson is actually on the committee with me. He wasn't at the last meeting, so you would know him. And so it was mostly introductions and kind of just business. And then the working groups will start to meet, and then I think it's July 20th, we'll have the next meeting. I did a panel in Dallas yesterday at the Broadband Community Summit. Yeah. Oh. Okay, if I talk right now, can somebody text me and let me know if they can hear anything? Okay, I'll put it very close to where I am. I know that you can hear on the.
We can hear you, Kelly.
That you can hear on the video stream because Amy just went out and checked that. Okay. And then is Amy in the room? She was there. Okay. Okay. So yeah, I presented yesterday with a few of the panel members in Dallas, and so we're moving forward with that. And so I'm sure there'll be lots of news to come, and definitely I would love to hear feedback as those meetings go forward. There's just a lot of information that can be gleaned from people in this room, so we want to be able to capture that. And then I'm going to move forward with this first update. So we have Gordy Coles here from Utah Communications Authority that's going to do the first presentation.
I have the power. All right. Get this started here. Okay, so there's been a lot going on in the FirstNet world. Kelly asked me, I'm going to tangle up here, sorry. Kelly asked me to come today and just give you a quick update on what's going on and what's been happening with FirstNet. Can I just tap this? There we go. So I just want to talk about a little bit where we are now with FirstNet and the RFP and the award and our next steps for Utah with regards to the state plan and to the governor's decision. So just a few quick fast facts. The RFP was released last year in January, as you all know, and the award was just made in last month on March 30th. And right now, FirstNet and AT&T, who's the awardee, are estimating that they'll start build out of the state RANs first quarter of 2018. Contract periods for 25 years with a ceiling on the contract of $100 billion. AT&T is planning on investing over the 25-year contract $40 billion into the network to build it out. And of that $40 billion, the contract, the law states that FirstNet or AT&T has to pay FirstNet back the initial $6.5 billion that they'll get to build out the initial part of the system. AT&T is committed to pay back FirstNet $18 billion. So more than 3 times of what the actual contract required. Mike Poth, CEO of FirstNet, said that they figure that about $2 billion of that $18 billion FirstNet will need to operate FirstNet for the 25 years. So they're planning on taking that $16 billion and putting it back into FirstNet, into the build out of the network. So as work orders, task orders come in for different things, they'll be able to pay AT&T for those additional things that come out over and above what's in the contract right now. So. And then they've challenged AT&T to make this a compelling offer so that they can get adoption from the majority of public safety entities within the first 4 years of the contract. So as I said, AT&T was awarded the contract, and along with AT&T, they're bringing, as part of their team, they're bringing Motorola Solutions, General Dynamics, Sapient Consulting, and Inmarsat government operations. And also each of these groups bring their own unique assets to the team, and so they'll help to enhance what AT&T can provide. And there's a description of what each of them brings. I won't go into that right now, but we can distribute the slides so you can see that. So just a few things on the deployment. Mike Poth stated that AT&T's bid met all 16 of the objectives in the RFP, and he stated also that their coverage objectives exceeded what was in the contract. He didn't elaborate on that, so I don't know what that means yet. And as we get the state plans, we'll be able to see more about that. We're probably going to see state plans, the draft, sometime mid-June. So, but Kay Kapoor, she's the president of AT&T Global Public Sector. She made this quote that she said, "We'll start bringing them on, meaning public safety users, on our regular bands, and offer them preemption and all the capabilities so that they ride above everyone else. They can do that on our regular networks while we build the Band 14 network out. And once we build that, then we can start to switch them over to the Band 14 network. But meanwhile, while we're building it," she says, "that they'll be able to have the capabilities of preemption and priority." So they're saying that once the state plan has been, once the governor's opted in, then state users that opt in or subscribe to AT&T, public safety users, will be given, by Q3 of this year, will be given the priority and quality of service on their commercial networks, so they don't have to wait for Band 14. And then by Q4 of this year, they'll also offer preemption. So all the users that want to come on right away will be able to do that, and they'll have those the quality of service, priority, and preemption immediately on AT&T's public networks, on their commercial networks, before Band 14 comes out. So Rich Reed, we just had a meeting with FirstNet, a webinar, and Rich Reed stated that FirstNet's, he said that, public safety deserves a special customer experience, so AT&T will offer a dedicated public safety help desk with call takers that will know and understand public safety applications and FirstNet operations and FirstNet services. And so this will be a help desk that's separate from the AT&T help desk that the public calls into. So this will be one dedicated to public safety users. And then they'll have a dedicated security operations center. They're going to have an app store that's accessible from within the network, so public safety users can search and download applications that they need to use as they do their jobs. And then also they're going to give them access to over 40,000 Wi-Fi hotspots. That's a pretty big thing there. So next steps, let me get my notes here so I don't forget something. So now that AT&T is brought on as a partner, AT&T and FirstNet's goal now is to get the state plans developed and issued out to us. So they're planning June 7th and 8th. We'll be meeting all the SPOCs and the SPOCs plus 4 members from each state. We'll be meeting in Dallas, Texas, and discussing the state plan. So basically, the purpose of this meeting will be for AT&T to present an overview of their plan, of their solution. They're going to demonstrate the state plan portal. The state plan will be issued through a portal. It's an 80-plus page document, so they're going to issue it electronically through this portal. And then they're going to train the SPOCs and their teams on how to use the portal, how to select the users that will have access to the portal. There's going to be 2 sides of the portal. Be a public side and a government side. You'll have to have special access to the government side. The public side, anybody can go into and look at, what the costs are, what apps are available, what services, coverage, those kind of things. But there'll be a side that's more geared towards the contractual things and the stuff that the governor's going to have to weigh in on for his decision, and that's not going to be open to the public. So you'll have to have authorization for that. Also, we'll be discussing the state plan review process that we're working on right now. I've contracted with a group called SAIC Scientific Applications International Corporation. We're working with them to develop a process to review the draft state plan when we get it. And we're also starting to gather information on who will be invited to be on the review team. So that will be forthcoming here pretty quickly. Actually, when we go to this meeting on June 7th, FirstNet has asked us to bring the list of reviewers that we're recommending to be on the review team. So we're going to have that ready to go before we go to this June meeting. And then NTIA will be providing some updates there, probably on the SLIG-P process. They're looking at extending the SLIG-P grant. They're bringing in some of the monies that haven't been spent in the first version of the grant, planning on offering a SLIG-P 2.0. So they'll take all those monies that are turned back in and states are deobligating. And a lot of states have already agreed to deobligate monies we have. And they'll take that money and redistribute it out to all the states, because some of the states have spent all their money, some haven't. So the majority haven't, actually. So from there, mid-June, they're planning on releasing the state draft plan, and then that will give us the opportunity to review that with the reviewers that we have picked. And then FirstNet will take that and put that together and release it on the portal, and then it'll be open for comments. So the reviewers, not the public, the reviewers that are assigned reviewers for the state plan will have a spot in there. You can actually go right into the portal, and there'll be a page there where they can make comments. And then they're going to have all the SPOCs and their teams go through the comments and, check for redundant comments and make sure that everything lines up properly, and then we'll vet the comments, basically, and then send those out, then we'll submit those to FirstNet. And then FirstNet will take, that'll happen through June, mid-June to July. I keep hitting that too far. Comments will be done by July. FirstNet will then review those comments, and then they'll take all that by August. Doesn't want to go now. What did I do? I broke it. There we go. Thank you. So by the end of August, they'll have reviewed all of the comments that were submitted from all the states for state plans. They'll put that into the final state plan, and then they're planning on, what am I doing, Kelly? You just have the touch. So by mid-September, they're planning on releasing the final version of the state plan to the governors, and then that starts the 90-day window for the governors' opt-in or opt-out decision. So that's the timeline that we have from now until the end of the year. The magic's gone. Okay, so this is about the portal. I just talked about that. There's a public side and a government side, and those that are on the review team, they will have to agree to some terms. There's some terms and conditions that have to be agreed to before you'll be allowed access to the government side of the portal. And then, of course, the public side, you'll be able to go on there and take a look at some of the offerings that FirstNet has. So the road to FirstNet so far, 2017, I might get too many more things. So they awarded the contract to the partner. FirstNet will be delivering the state plans, and we'll do the state plan reviews. And this is just through the end of 2017. Then FirstNet will deliver the state plan to the governor for his decision. Priority and preemption will be made available immediately on the commercial bands as soon as a state opts in. And then 2018 is the planned time to start the deployment of the RANs in each of the states, each of the opt-in states. Any states that opt out, it's going to be a lot farther down the road because there's a whole other process that has to be gone through for that. So by 2022, they figure the network will be substantially built out. So for our next steps for the state, FirstNet's going to release a guidance package out to us. Am I taking too much time? Okay. Right. This guidance package will be released before we go to the SPOC meeting, so we should have this before the June 7th date. It's going to include information on the review and comment process. There's going to be a state plan checklist, and that checklist will have finalizing the state draft review process, a checklist for creating the reviewer list, a checklist for reviewers agreeing to the portal's terms, a checklist for preparing discussion points prior to having a meeting with FirstNet on the state draft plan. So after we've had the draft for a while and we've had some time to go over it, then we're going to meet with FirstNet and have a discussion with them on that. So we'll have a checklist for that, and a checklist for creating a combined comment list for submission. So like I said, after all the comments have come in, we've got to go through and combine them and filter them and revise them, whatever, and then submit those to FirstNet. So then we're working on identifying the state plan reviewers. I've already talked about that. And then as far as outreach and education goes, we've been doing a lot of that. We're going to continue that throughout the rest of this year. And for agencies, when the draft plan is released, check the portal, go out and take a look at it, get a feel for it. If it looks like something that you want to use, run that up to your management so that they can be prepared for it. And this person is just looking for adoption. They want people to get out there and give it a try. And so just think of the future and how you're going to use it. And I think that's about all I have. So any questions?
Do you have information on how they're going to provide the priority and then the selection?
Can you use the microphone?
We can hear them. I knew they could hear us.
Question is, do you have any additional information on how they're going to give priority and preemption over their commercial
Over the
channels?
commercial users. It's something they haven't been willing to do, but now they say they're going to do it. They didn't give any details on how that would happen. I'm sure there's a lot of technical things that happen in the background that would give public safety users priority. I don't know how that's going to happen. Okay. They haven't released anything on that.
And then, from your viewpoint, what are the decision points that a state would need to evaluate for its opt-in, opt-out decision?
Well, there's the basic things like the coverage. Does it provide the coverage that we need? Is it comparable in cost to what we're paying for now for broadband services? What does the priority and preemption look like? What else is there? Cost, coverage, applications, what type of applications are available. Those are the things. Now, we'll be discussing more on that when we meet with the reviewers and getting input from them as well. So we can, because FirstNet is willing to take input on that, even though all the data collection that happened prior went into building the RFP, so there's a lot of things that can't change there. They are willing to look at input from the states now as we review the state plan, and they may make some changes if need be.
So the state plans are actually FirstNet's, or essentially AT&T's plan for each state. It's not a state plan that the states are submitting.
Right, right.
Okay.
So AT&T, now that they're on board, is going to work with FirstNet based off of the data collection, the data that we collected and sent and submitted to FirstNet back in 2014, and create a plan for each state from that. And then, so that will be submitted. We'll have to review that and give our input.
Thank you so much. So we're going to have Ray Timothy give a UEN update. If you want to use the microphone over there, you can probably just sit where you are. And
Thanks, Kelly. UEN, when Utah Education Network, prior to having telehealth added to our area of responsibility, we have seen some great success with the E-rate program in being able to work with the FCC and get reimbursements for costs of networking for our statewide network. And telehealth has been with us for 2 years now, and we've seen some success working with the Healthcare Connect funds, which is the healthcare E-rate side. And this past year, we applied for up to $25 million reimbursement, which is significant for us. It's interesting, one of the attorneys that I was working with in D.C. a couple weeks ago, his name's Jeff Mitchell, he was quoted as saying Utah is the best example of combining Healthcare Connect funds and E-rate. He's an advocate, trying to say, hey, Utah is a model to follow, and having those two types of services merge together and work well together. So we've been very successful. E-rate went through a modernization process of updating E-rate with the goal of streamlining and simplifying. And it's been very challenging and very difficult to see that the modernization was of any benefit. So I had the opportunity. Well, just one example. We still have 14 applications from fiscal year 2016 that are in the initial review stage. You know, by now we would have had the money, we would have spent the money already, but now they're still in initial review stage. So it's been very frustrating for us, and so I had the opportunity a couple weeks ago to go back with some of my cohorts from other states and meet with staff from the FCC. And we found out, we meet with them usually once a year, and we found out that there's been such a turnover rate with FCC staff members as well as USAC staff members that they don't know who we are anymore, and we didn't know who they were. So the meeting was basically, you know, this is who we are. We're state research and education networks, and these are the services that we provide, and this is the history we've had with both the FCC and with USAC, trying to help them catch up and be on the same page that we are. We had the opportunity to meet with staff members from Commissioner Clyburn's office, and you know, it was interesting in our conversation. You know, when we asked them, what do you believe? What are Commissioner Clyburn's priorities or goals for the FCC? And theirs was a concern for the new leadership and concern that things may roll back and we may be losing the many gains that we've had over the past few years. And so there's some real concern from that commissioner, at least. We met with staff members of Chairman Pai and talked about the chairman's letter that he sent out. I don't know if you're familiar with the letter that he sent to USAC, but he basically sent a letter to USAC and said, get your act together. You know, E-rate modernization was to streamline and simplify, and state consortiums. We are a consortium filer. We file on behalf of our stakeholders. We do all the filing, all the paperwork for them, so that takes the burden away from them. And Chairman Price sent a letter to USAC and said, you know, you've damaged it. You're making it worse. Get your act together, and I want it done by such and such a date. So his goal, Chairman Pai's goals, according to staff members, was that, again, getting broadband out to everyone across the nation, and real support there. Meeting with Commissioner O'Reilly, staff member, the same thing is the goal of the FCC from Commissioner O'Reilly's perspective is to make sure that we expand broadband to the underserved areas of the country. And then, again, back to the combination of the Healthcare Connect funds and E-rate, Commissioner O'Reilly would like to see what we are doing in Utah, and that is merging the two together and not having two separate sets of rules that you have to follow for reimbursement or the discount rate. So I felt like the opportunity was good. We still are frustrated. We still haven't seen any of our applications come forward yet. But what I plan on doing is I'm going to take my E-rate team. We're going to go back to D.C. and we're going to sit down with USAC. That's kind of where we feel the bottleneck is we're going to sit down with USAC and just talk things through and say, you know, this is the concern that we see. Can you help us? What do we need to do to be able to move forward? And this is almost a last-ditch effort to do this, because if we see the success, I hope we can, and do it with in a positive relationship, I think it'll be very beneficial. If they feel like we're coming after them and attacking them and bad-mouthing them, I think it will come back to haunt us and make things worse. If we don't see the progress, the next step would be to involve our legislators and the governor's office to help us out, because there's such turnover that what's happening is they're interpreting rules differently. For example, there's a state organization from the state of Missouri, very similar to us. They have been doing their E-rate filings the same way for 15 years. And now USAC is making them go back and they're re-auditing the past 15 years. And they're interpreting the process differently. And they're saying, you're not doing it right, you haven't done it right for the last 15 years, therefore you owe us X million of dollars that we gave you. And so we feel like all state networks are feeling like that could happen. And we don't want that to happen. So that's why we're going back and we're going to have the face-to-face and, pray for us, please. So that's my update on the FCC visit. I don't know if you have any questions on that. If not, I've asked Dennis to kind of give an update as to where we are with some of our applications and some of the RFPs that have gone out, some of the awards that have just been announced.
Ray, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Two quick questions.
Oh, yeah, let's just put it right there.
When is your meeting with USAC? Has that been scheduled?
It has not. We're going to be meeting within 2 weeks, the end of May. We'll be there the May 31st through June 2nd.
And so I gathered that you have a set of criteria that you're going to use to determine whether that meeting is successful or not. Can you share us what is a successful meeting going to look like for you?
For me, a successful meeting would be coming to a joint resolution that these are being approved and now you can move forward. To me, that would be a successful meeting. If they're not approved and they continue to ask us for more background information way beyond what's reasonable, that will not be successful.
Move forward with applications that you have pending.
Yes. And we have full confidence that we have done things correctly, that there is no reason to be holding our applications up.
One of the pain points, Dennis Sampson with UETN, as Ray's talked about, one of the pain points for us right now is a project we've awarded to Strata Networks in Daggett County. We're anxious to begin that project, and there are some real constraints, funding constraints. If we do not receive funding from one of our applications, this is one of the ones that's being held up. We're working with Lynn Yoakum and UDOT on that project as well as a partner. It's a critical broadband development project for the county. There's a lot of support, as you guys know, from the 7-County Infrastructure Coalition, the Daggett County Commission, UETN, certainly Daggett School District, the 2 schools we want to construct fiber to starting this summer. And this is one of those projects that's caught up in this lack of approval, and we've actually answered a number of different questions over the last several months. Strata's been a great partner in helping us answer USAC's questions. So we're really hoping that as a result of this meeting and some of the other concerns we have and Strata has in terms of the timing of the project, that we can start as soon as possible within the next 60 days. So we did want to tell you, though, if funding continues to get delayed on that project, I think even Dave Ryan would tell you that there could be some real concerns about Strata's ability to even complete the project with us. So but we're anxious to get that project moving. One other project we'd want to highlight is with San Juan County. We issued an RFP in January and received 2 proposals. We made an award to Emory Telecom this week. We're excited about that project. The total value of the project is around about $5.2 million. We look at this project in different stages. We weren't able to award the entire project for San Juan County. Getting down into Monument Valley, Navajo Mountain was pretty costly, as we thought it would be. We think there's an opportunity to come back next year and issue another RFP to potentially pick up those projects. But the ones that we're going to begin with, Emory, we're going to construct fiber to Bluff Elementary, White Mesa Library with the Ute Mountain Ute Tribe, Montezuma Creek Elementary, and Whitehorse High School. So it's about 40 miles of total fiber. We're excited to work with Emory Telecom on this project. Brock, Jared, I don't know if you guys have any comments you'd like to share, but I know you guys put a lot of work into it. That contract was just awarded this week.
They're just hopeful you have the money to pay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we will need the funding, absolutely, but oh, the total for San Juan County?
Yeah.
About $5.2 million of one-time cost, yeah.
And so with the E-rate program, just to give you a very brief overview, so they'll connect the schools, there's huge federal discounts. So we get a lot of federal money to do it. It makes it easier for the providers then to go.
Sorry, Kelly, we can't hear you.
Okay, I'm holding the microphone. I should know better. And so a lot of times getting into the schools is the first step in getting into the community as a whole and for economic development in general. And we use it kind of strategically in the state to get broadband out to different areas. And so in San Juan County, it's a huge discount because of the reservation. Is it like 90, 95%?
So 95% of this project, assuming we can get things worked out with USAC, will be paid for through E-rate funds through USAC. And so that's why it's so critical, that relationship with USAC. It doesn't cost us that much money for the project, since 95% of it
so
would
the
be
state
funded through E-rate.
is only having to pay a sliver, but there are deadlines and timelines to try and get it done. And there's a special funding window right now, and so they're just trying to get everything taken care of.
Yeah, thanks. It is an exciting project. Jeff Egley's not here, but Jeff Egley and Jim Stewart and Kevin, a lot of folks on our team have worked really years, in the making, including Emory. We issued an RFP last year. Unfortunately, we weren't able to make an award last year, and so we went back at it this year. There's one more year with the special construction funds that Kelly mentioned through the E-rate program that we hope to get the final stages of the project completed. But it's exciting to be able to contract and then file this year. Oh, so the Daggett County question was, how much is the Daggett County project? It's about $3.5 million total for our portion of the project. Strata Networks is putting in additional capital for the project. I think, Dave, around $4 million. I think about $4 million. So the entire project's about 7.5, of which UETN and UDOT would help with about 3.5 million of that.
And those are some of the hardest areas in the state to serve, obviously. So it's a huge, big deal. And other states, I don't think, are able to serve some of those types of areas, and so we're really lucky that we're being able to progress on these projects. So they're a huge, big deal.
Yeah, and as you all know, the construction timeline and months for construction are limited in Daggett County, so we're hoping we don't lose this year, and I'm sure Dave is too, in terms of the construction schedule. So that's a critical decision point for the project that's coming up.
And, as this progresses, if there's, one consideration you might want to make is if there are, members of the advisory council that want to put together a letter in support or something, that might be something that would be good to coordinate. So let us know how things progress.
We have an in there.
And what would be helpful just to be supportive. And Dave Ryan and I, we were in Dallas yesterday and talked to the COO of USAC, and we're very diplomatic and told them that we really appreciated the programs and that these were a really big deal for Utah, and we're very positive about moving forward with them. Okay, so the next item of business, and we're super excited about this, so EDC Utah is back, and I don't think Mike Flynn has ever presented before. So he's going to give us some overview items, and we're going to talk a little bit about the new launch of the locate.utah.gov site. So we'll move over.
How does this run, Just space to...
Yeah, I think it's... Hopefully not. There you go. You just down and up.
Excellent. Thanks, Kelly. My name is Mike Flynn. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at the Economic Development Corporation of Utah. We've been working with Kelly and the office here for probably the better part of a year on a project to merge a program that we've built and a program that they have into something that hopefully is greater than the sum of the parts. So just quickly, I wasn't sure who might know about us as an organization. EDC Utah has been around for about 30 years. We partner with the state on primarily corporate recruiting, so working with companies outside of the state that have expressed an interest in moving business to the state of Utah. So you probably a lot of times see announcements of companies that have decided to move here, and there's a bunch of acronyms at the bottom. We generally are one of those acronyms. We do a lot of project management. Max Backlund here is a former project manager for us and is now managing a different initiative, but we do pretty much this one thing. We represent the entire state, so we put projects into all corners of the state. We're unique in that we are a public-private partnership. The state relationship, we have about 60 cities and counties, and then we have a number of private sector members. Jennifer there representing one of our founding members at EDC Utah. Wanted to talk through quickly how our business works so you can see why this development is so important to us and going to make us a lot more efficient. So this is a rough outline of a project process, and full disclosure, no project in history has ever gone this way. There typically are a lot more lines, but to try and make this a little more easy to understand. So we do a lot of marketing things. If we start on the left, we do a lot of out-of-state marketing, trying to educate companies on Utah's value proposition. And when we're successful in that, a company, what we call a project, will come to us. A lot of times we don't know who they are, so it'll be company XYZ or project XYZ. And they come to us typically with a lot of different questions, and those questions can be project-specific around tell us about labor, or tell us about real estate, or tell us about a number of things. Oftentimes they are community-specific, so they want to know about specific sites in different parts of the state. So I need a 50-acre land site, or I need a 100,000-foot building. And we do a lot of research gathering and communication back and forth with the client in that process. And part of this project we've been working with Kelly on is directed to help make that more efficient. When we do that well, typically a company will say, okay, let's come take a look at Utah. We host about one company a week in our office that is looking at Utah for some sort of type of investment. If we do a good job on the site visit, typically they want to talk about incentives. That's when we bring them over here and introduce them to GoEd and Ben Hart and Tom Wadsworth and Val and the whole corporate recruiting team, and they talk state incentives. We'll plug them into the city or county to talk about local incentives, and when all this goes well, we win a deal. Last year we won 20 projects that created about 15,000 jobs, or I should say committed to create about 15,000 jobs in the state. This year I think we've won 26 to create about 6,000 jobs, so the job numbers are down, which sort of goes part and parcel with an unemployment rate of 3%. We're seeing bigger projects with smaller job footprints. So in this process, we've been working with Kelly really to solve this. And that is the act of us going out to a community and saying, what do you have as far as a site that is this shape or size? And that is kind of a clunky process sometimes. There are, I think, 85 cities with more than 5,000 people in the state. There are 29 counties. There are economic development departments that are very sophisticated. There's our economic development departments that are less sophisticated. And ultimately, we want to turn around a cohesive proposal to a client, so everything to be sort of the same level, the same professionalism. And we do a lot of hand-holding and sometimes a lot of education with communities in this community-specific part of the process. So the community RFI, a little detail on that, it's generally designed to identify a specific viable piece of real estate or a site for a prospective recruiting project. And it needs to be quick turnaround, so companies will typically come to us and say, we need an answer in 48 hours. It's not uncommon for companies to say, we need a packet tomorrow. It needs to be high-level data, so they typically aren't trying to drill down to sort of the 10-foot level, 10,000-foot level information works. And that information typically is around who do I need to know on the economic development end, on the utility end. If the site's being marketed, who's the broker, who's the developer. What are the general site parameters? So acreage, square footage, site features, like there's some sort of impediment or right-of-way. What are the costs that anticipated with the site? So if it's a purchase or if it's a lease. If it's a building, what are the specs on the building? What does access look like in and out of the site? There's a lot of questions sometimes around infrastructure and utilities, and then there's questions around, can you send me a rendering or can you send me an aerial? Hopefully what you notice here, and what Kelly helped educate us on, was a lot of this could be done through GIS. We didn't need to go out and talk to people and have them fill out information which may or may not be accurate 6 months later. It was something that when we started this project a long time ago we knew, but we didn't really in our office have the sophistication to do this a smart way, so we were doing it sort of in a manual process. And the last part, which is important, is uniformity of product. We don't want to have a site select out because it looks bad, even though it might be a great piece of real estate. So the desire to be able to do that quickly and professionally led to the creation of this thing we call Sure Sites. And SURE stands for Select Utah Real Estate. And the 1.0 version of this actually started in 2006. And it was a deliverable of the first EDC Utah GoEd contract. So a little bit of background, in 2004 there was a group inside of state government called DCED, the Department of Community and Economic Development. I don't know if anybody remembers that, but the decision was made when Governor Huntsman was elected to restructure economic development in the state, and they formed GoEd, and GoEd led a contract for a certain set of corporate recruiting services, which EDC Utah bid on. One of the items in there was to create this premier qualified sites program featuring industrial and office building and land sites designed to meet the needs of relocating or expanding businesses. So that was a specific deliverable inside of that first contract. And so EDC Utah created Sure Sites. The initial site went live in 2006. It was hosted by a company called GIS Planning that I believe is out of business now. And it was very expensive, and it housed this 50-point questionnaire where we went out and manually gathered data. And then what GIS Planning did was they essentially took a pin and put it on the map where the site was, and they attached this PDF document to that site. So fairly rudimentary in terms of how we were approaching it. This 50-point questionnaire covered a wide range of topics. Again, some of those that we could accomplish through a more sophisticated mapping application. And that site ran probably for 5 or 6 years like that. And then as sort of GIS prices came down and availability came open, we navigated away from the GIS planning infrastructure, which was really expensive on an annual basis, and navigated to what we sort of were calling an open-sourced, lower-cost platform, and it was a Google Map-based platform. We pared the questionnaire down significantly. We'd learned a lot in the 5 or 6 years, and frankly, the flexibility that came with even an open-source Google Maps platform, you know, we didn't need to put as much information in the application because there was a lot more available through the GIS application. And this is what we've run with for probably the last 2 or 3 years. And then a year ago, I had moved away from the state. I came back to the state, and I became more familiar with the locate.utah.gov platform, and it just seemed like a no-brainer to me that we would try to marry these two things. We had arguably the best GIS platform in the state, housed inside of a partner of ours that we had this contractual relationship with. We were spending this money over here on something that didn't work quite as well, and so we started talking with Kelly about trying to marry these two systems, which Kelly's much smarter than I am. She had this thought years and years ago, but didn't want to step on anybody's toes. So when we expressed an interest in doing this, she was all for it, and so we started this Sure Sites 3.0, which was to be the marriage of UtahSureSites.com and locate.utah.gov. We worked with Kelly, we worked with Bert, and figured out a way to leverage the power of Locate's mapping and infrastructure database with our product database, our site database, and really allowed us to have the best of both worlds, all the infrastructure, all the site-specific stuff we needed with some of the basic cost and availability information that we had. And really, the vision was if these could come together, it would probably give us one of the most powerful sites and building databases in the country. Every economic development group has something like this, and they range from an Excel spreadsheet with a bunch of columns and rows with data to very expensive mapping infrastructure. But we thought if we could pull this off and make this work, we would have something pretty special. And they did it. So this went live in a soft launch yesterday, 2 days ago.
Yesterday it went live. We haven't announced it yet because we want it to be live for a little bit before we announce it and people start.
But what this did was it took all of the great data that has been built as part of locate.utah.gov for years, the broadband, the utility, the workforce. Yeah, this is just a screenshot, but if that sounds dangerous. If it doesn't work, we'll look like idiots. Bert, I hope your resume is dialed up, Bert, because this could either be good or bad. See, this is
What? It's been slow everywhere, so. You wanna keep talking, we can go back in a second. Let's just go through it, maybe, and we'll do the live.
So the idea was to take this data that we were gathering manually, some of the questionnaire data on broadband and utilities, and where's the electrical, and where's the gas, and where do the roads come in, and how does the site lay out. Take all of that and combine with the site data we had on, here's the economic developer, here's the real estate flyers, here's all the site data into a platform that not only functioned much better, but had just a lot more depth and breadth of information. And so we spent probably the last 3 or 4 months working on this, and then Kelly sent this the other day and said it's live, and we were ecstatic. We have not, as Kelly said, started to market this yet, wanted to let it run for a little bit, work out any bugs, but probably the beginning of next month, we're going to work in tandem on a pretty aggressive marketing campaign to get this out to our audiences outside the state, people that bring us projects. Whether it is the site consultants that sometimes act as an intermediary in this process, or going to companies directly to let them know that we've got this great tool now that allows them to do a tremendous amount of the site search from their desktop and learn a lot about all the great infrastructure we have in the state, all the great services we have in the state. So do we want to actually pull one up here?
Yeah, so if you click on the first, the search site up here,
So typical process, a company or a consultant might come in and say, listen, I know I need a 50-acre land site for a manufacturer. I mean, that is a fairly general sort of jumping off point for us. And so you have the ability to click land. You know, urban and rural designations used to play a bigger role when it came to incentives. It's kind of all been streamlined now. But if a company knows we're going to be an emitter and they need to be in a rural area, or if they know they need 1,000 employees and they need the population center of more of an urban area, they can select down based on that, and then they can dial in their acreage, and what it would do is populate a series of pins that then you can click on and pull up all the really dialed in site information. And I believe when you click on some of the broadband utilities tabs, it lays those maps over the top, so you can really do a sophisticated investigation of a piece of dirt. Much more so than anything we've been able to do in the past.
Anyway, I think it's my computer and not the site, so. You should be able to see some pins, and then you can click on the site, and it'll
Sure.
pull up the report.
I think I had one more slide. Will you jump back to the PDF?
Okay.
Jump to the next one. So, tremendous accomplishment to get these two platforms married. Required a lot of back-end work by Bert that I want to say thank you for. Next steps for us, so this is not the end of the process. We need to go through and refine. Now that we have this capability, we want to refine some of the SureSite criteria, maybe take some out, add some in. Data that is duplicative with the new GIS capabilities we want to pull out, and that'll afford us the ability to maybe add some things that aren't accomplished through GIS in. We need to streamline the site submission process. Right now that all lives on our website, but because the interface is on the locate website, we have to get that, just the mechanics of that figured out. As Kelly said, this is soft launch right now, but once we're comfortable that everything works, we'll do a big marketing campaign to in-state audiences to encourage them to submit properties, whether that's the brokerage community or the economic development community, but also national audiences to let them know, you know, if you're at the front end of a search and you don't want to make a phone call, but you want to gather some basic information, we've got a great tool now to do that. And the last thing that's really exciting for us is trying to leverage or trying to tie this new tool we have to the creation of what we're calling a megasite program, which is essentially like a SureSite on steroids. So they're much larger pieces of dirt. The amount of data that we want to gather is infinitely more complex. And they're sites that are really intended for what we call landmark projects, which are billion-dollar investment or 1,000-job creation potential projects. So we know these deals happen 1 or 2 times a year. We know that we don't see a lot of them in Utah for various reasons, and we think if we can create a mega site infrastructure, which we're well on the way to doing, and tie it to this great tool, we'll be able to vault forward in terms of the types and the volume of the projects we see really on the large end. And so I wanted to come here today and thank the team here for everything they've done. Thank Bert for dealing with a group of people that maybe are not the most sophisticated when it comes to this kind of stuff. And really
so this is what it looks like. So
there you go.
You're able to see all the sites, and then you can get a report of the sure sites. And the cool thing, can I grab the microphone? Yeah. One of the cool things about it is that you have, we did 2 different types of reports, and Bert's team was very good at figuring this out. So if you go to a sure site, and you get a summary report of that sure site, it pulls up not only what you saw in the traditional locate report, but all of that real estate information. Like if they had loaded a picture, it brings up property description, and then it goes into, you know, your regular report. If you click somewhere on the map that doesn't have a sure site, it will still generate a report. It just doesn't have that first part with all of the real estate information. And then we've also moved it so that the button actually has the summary report on it, because I think when people were navigating locate, they'd click on a point and then the summary report was kind of in the corner. And this, I think we're going to get a lot more report generation because we've made it a lot more clear where that it does have that capability. So.
All the data coming in.
So your system feeds our system daily? Weekly?
Daily.
How often does the locate database ping our sites database? Nightly. And the way we've built the application is a site essentially times out at the 6-month mark, and the person that put the site in gets an email that says this is going to be pulled off unless you validate that everything is still accurate. So if there's a site on here that a user does take down, there's a chance that it would still be on the site before, right, but we've gone through a lot of different ways. We've tried to send them a monthly reminder, and that sort of was annoying. So we've kind of dialed in the 6-month timeline as the window to which we have everything updated. Anything else? I just want to say, again, thank you. This is great. This is, you know, when we started this 10 years ago, this is what we wanted this to be, and it took a little longer than it probably should have, but I'm glad we're here. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so the next presentation, guys. Okay. Okay, so the next presentation that we have is on the Point of the Mountain development, and they have never been here before to present to us. So we're super excited, and it's an area of the state that I'm sure a lot of providers have interest in putting in infrastructure as the process goes on. So we are very pleased to have you here, and I'll let you just take over.
Thanks, Kelly. So as mentioned earlier, my name is Brian Christensen. I'm with Horrocks Engineers. Back in 2016, let me get this rolling here. 2016, the Utah State Legislature commissioned wrote a bill basically to authorize a commission to study the undeveloped land in around the Point of the Mountain area. And this was the members of that team. So the lead agency is Envision Utah. Then they had a smattering of professional technology consultants and experts in the various fields. So the purposes of the effort was to maximize job creation, ensure high quality of life for residents, strategic growth, preserve lands, provide a variety of community and housing types, and plan for future transportation improvements. The study is actually divided up into 3 phases, and we're just wrapping up the first phase right now, which consisted of development and of criteria, stakeholder outreach, and then presenting those to the commission, and then the next phases will be coming up with scenarios, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. This is the project area. It's not just the prison site. A lot of people think that, what are we going to do with the prison site? It's the area within the prison, but it's a much larger footprint around that area because there's a lot of undeveloped land in that vicinity, and they wanted to create some consensus within the various agencies, city, county, to bring some consensus about how do we want to master plan that development, or do we master plan that development? Do we just let the cities just dictate how they want that land to be developed on their own? So the total size of that is about 20,000 acres. So you might have seen earlier this year in January, February, there was some stakeholder outreach which was kind of the initial kickoff to the whole effort. They invited over 175 stakeholders, and again, these were folks from local municipalities, counties, state, and also from the business community as well, to try and get a good cross-section of how would be a smart way to develop this land. And then they broke out into specific discipline meetings, I'll call it that, after that. And I'll touch on those a little bit later as we get through this. They developed a website and then did an employee survey to some of the tech companies that were in the area. These were some of the experts that they had. There was a lot of media coverage that came out about the same time as well, as you've probably already heard. At the key stakeholder kickoff meeting, these were some of the big ideas that people were coming up with. Like, okay, do we want to have a sports stadium? Do we want to have a golf course? Do we want to have a water park? Or what kind of things do we want to have in that area? And then they gathered input from the website, from the public side, as well as from the stakeholder side, and they aggregated them down to these. This is about the top 8, I think, that had the highest hit. So number 1 was a kind of a tech campus, a university research type facility. The next one was they wanted to have some sufficient open space for recreation. There was ideas of, as you can see here on the slide, just innovative transportation, mixed-use developments, and those types of things. I think I even heard there was an NFL stadium at one point. But with those big ideas, there were also challenges that they wanted to ask the stakeholders for. What are the things that are going to prevent us to achieve that utopian level of perfect development? And so again, they asked the public as well as the stakeholders what those challenges are. And the number 1 on both sides was traffic congestion specifically. I live actually at the point of the mountain, and to get from one side of the freeway to the other at 5 o'clock takes about 45 minutes, and it's like half of a mile drive. It's crazy. So that's a big thing is obviously traffic, and also to build collaboration, coordination between the different agencies that have their interests in that area. Air quality is another very high one, preservation of open space, and housing and office affordability. They asked some of the major tech companies some surveys, and these are some of the example questions that they asked them. How did you come to Utah? Where do you live? These types of things. These were the top reasons why the employees said that they chose to move or stay in Utah. Number 1 was family or friends, low cost of living, good job opportunity, Utah culture, as you can see on the list here. And then they asked them also what reasons they might move away from Utah. And the number 1 was air quality, low salaries, and you can see on the list as it goes down. So these were the things that were important to the employees of those tech companies. And then again, they asked them what they would change about it, and the number 1 on that was again had to deal with transportation and the lack of being able to get around. They were also concerned about the environmental sustainability and those types of things. So their ideal housing choice was low density. So this is going to be your single family home on your quarter-acre lot type of a thing. And then that was the most popular response for those employees, and then getting a little more condensed as with decreasing popularity. This slide shows the location of where the employees of those companies live, which is primarily located in northern Utah County and southern Salt Lake County, and kind of fingering out from there, which is kind of what everybody expected. But there are some folks who quite a long drive to get to work. So transportation, it was the largest item of concern. I'm going to hit that one first, and then so these are the things that were most important: freeways, roads, street connectivity, and mixed land use, etc. The challenge with this area is that there's only one corridor, and that has regional can convey regional traffic, and that's I-15, right? There's not a whole lot else out there yet, and they're expecting. Did I already passed that? Oh, they're expecting another 56% of vehicles to be on I-15 by 2040. So this graph kind of shows, on the x-axis shows the I-15 corridor, and then the y-axis shows the amount of traffic. So in the boxed area, it shows the amount of growth that's going to be happening projected to happen, I should say, between 2014 and 2050. So there are existing master plans that are already in place which address that. This is the existing street network that we have, and some planned future build-out with transit and future freeway expansion of Mountain View Corridor, etc. And this shows some trails. One of the big solutions that the recommendations are coming back with is to look at multimodal transportation solutions, not just cars, but bikes and trails and transit, those types of things. They do want cross-connectivity between the east and west sides of I-15, connections between tracks and front runner, and transit connections between Daybreak and those types of things, as you can see on the list here. I won't read them for you. Sorry, I'm going kind of quickly because there's just a lot of information that I'm trying to cram into just a few minutes. Am I? Am I okay? Okay, good. So the green infrastructure had to deal with more recreational opportunities as well as environmental impacts. This slide shows the types of recreation areas that are there. And so there are some trails that are in the area, but there's definitely some challenges associated with those trails. They're not completely connected, and they don't really have a lot of recreation use besides just the trail itself. They try to tie the trail to a park or other type of a recreational opportunity. Wildlife was also studied, so this is the different kinds of wildlife that is in the area. You've got birds, and you can see on the list there. Like I said, I won't read them for you, but concerns about the impacts to wildlife. So some of the main themes and ideas that came back from this was, again, the connectivity for the east and west side mountain ranges for recreation and also for wildlife habitat, a connected network of trails, and envision of Jordan River boating access up and down that corridor. I didn't realize that the point of the mountain was, I guess it's a world-class paragliding park. I had no idea that was the case, but apparently they just love it there. In fact, when I drove in this morning, there was about 50 of them out there this morning. It's a beautiful day. Anyway, so that kind of touches on the green infrastructure. Utilities. We also had met with various utility companies and had some high-level discussions about what it would take to fit that growth mold. The existing infrastructure, there are existing master plans in place for that redevelopment, but they don't take into account a high-density cluster. It's more of, they were kind of envisioning additional just residential and kind of that type of thing. The power companies are telling us that they can meet the existing demands, and with most of the future demand, they're expecting up to 86% of meeting the future demand by just conservation and efficiency, which I was shocked. I was like, wow, that's a lot. But that's what they're projecting. As far as water and sewer and stormwater, these are also things that are critical whenever you're developing an area. Again, they believe that they have adequate infrastructure to meet those demands, and they're assuming some conservation measures to be incorporated as part of that. But again, they're concerned about making sure that we get into some long-range plans for that. And then everybody in the room should be concerned about this as more as telecommunications and what's going to happen with that. There is if this is going to be a tech area, broadband is critical, right? There are a lot of carriers that are on I-15 just because of the fact that it's I-15, and UDOT does a great job at sharing their conduit so that people can get into that corridor. We also have Mountain View Corridor to the west of that's going to be expanding future to the south into Utah County. There's great wireless service right now, and there's a data center nearby. I actually had Kelly's office put together this map for us that shows kind of how many broadband fiber providers are in the area, as you can see there. So there's more than just one or two. So to meet the future demand of this growth, there needs to be additional wireless infrastructure built, cell towers, rooftop antennas, and small cells, and then obviously a lot of additional fiber to make those cell towers talk, as well as fiber to connect to the businesses that are going to be in that area. There are definitely some last mile challenges to get from wherever the distribution backhaul points are over to feed those whatever it's going to be, if it's a business or if it's a residential subdivision. The idea of having utility corridors built within the roadways is something that we're recommending so that it would facilitate easy construction and addition for your facilities in those areas. Implementing Dig Once policies, and also to try and streamline agency regulation to make it easier for telecommunications companies to get in there and provide those services. I wanted to open this up really quick. Are there any other ideas that this group would have that we can take back to the commission to say this is something else, besides what I've just mentioned, but other ideas that people would have in this room? And if you don't want, if you can chime in now, or if I can take it at the end, that we can take back to the commission. Okay. Because I'm here. Anyway, how are we doing on time, Kelly? Are we okay?
I think one of the most obvious questions is what's the best way for the providers to kind of stay engaged along the process so that they can put in infrastructure and so that they can partner with those communities? Like, what's the best way for them to stay engaged and stay on top of the needs?
Well, that's a great question. I believe the answer is that we are going to, as we are going into the next phases of this, of developing the actual scenarios of what that area is going to be developing into, we're going to be looking at different land use types and then modeling different types of development, and we'll make some recommendations and how much it's going to cost to do that. As part of that, we will have to be coordinating with the cities and counties to bring that to pass, and to actually make them part of that process so that they are on board with it. And we are making some strong recommendations for them to, as I mentioned earlier, about the utility corridors and putting conduit in the ground and making sure that is not just an afterthought, but it's something that's thought of ahead of time. And then we'll make the final recommendations to the commission later next year as part of that. I can come back to this group.
Yeah, that would be helpful if you could kind of give us regular updates on different stages.
Absolutely.
That would be really helpful.
I think that would be the best way to do it. Then I don't know if, the rest of it talks a little bit about the services and entertainment. Basically, they just want more recreational opportunities and more affordable housing, and because that's a challenge, as you all know right now, that the housing market is red hot right now, and prices are going up like crazy, and especially in that area. So going back, well, like I said, the next phase of this is to step up to go to make some recommendations and develop scenarios and come up with funding opportunities, or at least identify how much it's going to cost to make all of this happen, and then rely upon the commission appointed by the legislature to take it into, bring it to fruition, I guess. And by that point, as the cities and counties have been engaged from the very beginning, they will have been able to ideally they would incorporate these things into their plan so that it will become the best that it can for everybody. So I think that's the end of my presentation. Is there any comments or questions from anybody? Okay. Any other recommendations about how we can make your lives easier to get in, besides what I've already mentioned?
And you can feel free to, if you have more of a specific question for your business that you want to talk offline with Brian,
I'll be here.
There might be some people that want to do that.
Yep, absolutely.
So, yeah.
Okay, thanks, everyone.
Okay, so our next item of business, we're going to have Flint Timmons come up. And I think I still need to load your PowerPoint, right? Okay, let me do that really quick. So Flynn has been working on a really interesting project of late, looking at municipal websites. Let me just, which one?
Broadband presentation.
Perfect. And then I'm sure you're going to talk, provide you an introduction of the team, so I'll just let you introduce yourself.
So again, my name is Flint Timmons, and I'm with the State of Utah's Rural Planning Group. We're housed in the Department of Workforce Services, Division of Housing and Community Development. We are a relatively new group. We were created about 3.5 years ago to assist rural communities with mainly planning activities. And as time has gone on, it's really morphed into more planning and technical assistance as well as management assistance. And so, as Kelly mentioned, what we've been doing recently is we conducted an assessment of rural websites to gauge them for transparency and usability for both the municipality as well as the resident. And as time has gone on, we realized, well, it's not only those two groups that would be interested in, but also business development, particularly in light of the governor's 25,000 jobs initiative in rural Utah by the year 2020. The more information that is available to all parties, the better off the state will be and the better off these communities will be. And reliable data has been a historical problem for rural areas, particularly in rural Utah. That's where we spend all our time, and we spin a lot of wheels in trying to find accurate and correct data for these entities. So our vision for the Rural Planning Group is rural communities that are self-reliant, self-determined, and prepared for the future, meaning that these communities are able to make decisions for themselves. They have the know-how, at least to be conversant in the various issues that they face, and that they are able to prepare for the future as times change rather than react to what has happened to them. They are able to take charge of their futures. So why rural? Why does it matter? We have several representatives here from the rural parts of the state, and this the Broadband outreach has had exceptional efforts in the rural parts of the state. But as far as why we are concerned about rural, about 166 of Utah's 243 municipalities can be considered rural or are surrounded and served by other rural areas. 25 of Utah's 29 counties can be considered rural. There are several of those counties, typically called shoulder counties, that are changing quite rapidly. Washington County, Box Elder, Juab, that designation may change a little bit. And depending on how you classify it, approximately 30% of Utah's population can be considered living in a rural area. Perhaps they live in a large municipality but are surrounded and live in a rural area. And it's an important economic driver to the state, as you all well know. So why this municipal website assessment? The idea really came from things we had seen done in other states, New Jersey and Texas, for example, as well as certain areas of California, where they had transparency initiatives to rate the web accessibility of information for a municipality. We saw that idea and saw that it was something that could be useful here in this state, particularly as we would visit other communities in preparation for our work there. We'd often visit their website and find out that they were often lacking in the information that we needed, common information that everybody would need if they were to do business or think about moving to that community. So we went into our assessment with 3 questions. Are municipal websites transparent? Are they accessible, and are they useful? So to do that, we looked at 13 criteria for a municipal website. Several of these are required by state law. Municipalities are not required to have a website, but they are required to provide this information. And as you know, web access becomes increasingly prevalent in rural Utah, we see this as an area where websites, where citizens are going to turn to more and more. You know, it's always this misconception that people are still, you know, driving a horse and buggy out in rural Utah. You know, people are up to date. They have their iPads, they have their smartphones, they have their broadband internet. They're up to date. They're connected to the broader world, and often the municipalities don't realize that. So some of the criteria we looked at are the city contact information. Are you able to contact City Hall? Does the website tell you how? Are you able to contact your elected officials? Does the website tell you who they are, how to contact them if you have questions, what is their area of authority? Public meeting information. When do the public bodies meet? What's their regular time? What's their regular day? Where's their minutes and their agendas? Code and ordinances. Where's their general plan? Where are their ordinances if I have questions? This is a really important topic for business development. If I'm looking to expand my business or create a business in a rural area, I would like to look at their general plan to see what they have planned for different areas. You know, if I'm on the locate, you know, .utah.gov website, I would want to compare that information with the city's plan for that area. Is there a zoning map, general plan? Is there the government records and management access request information to request government documents? Is there financial information, their annual financial statements, their annual budget? Is there information on how I can file for a business license? The last four things were really about web design and utility. So was the site organized in a logical and intuitive way, or would it be really difficult and have to search for everything? Do they have a workable search bar or searchability on the website? Is it designed clearly? Do I understand what I'm looking at? And then lastly was access. We define access as appearing on the first page in a search engine. What we found, and what sort of surprised me, we'd enter in the name of a town and we would have maybe a half dozen websites show up for all different purposes. One may have been from the Chamber of Commerce, one may have been from, you know, a local family history enthusiast who documented the history of the area. Some of them were just somebody who maybe liked riding their ATV in the area, and so they dedicated a website to that town. So we found out that there's a lot of confusion, and when we did find these websites, we found a wide array of quality and quantity. So here we assigned each of those 13 criteria. The more you met, the higher your letter grade was. So if you got 13 out of 13, you're at A+. If you didn't meet any of them or did not have a website, you were at an F. You know, again, F didn't mean that you fail. You know, Rural Planning Group is not a regulatory authority. We're an advisory authority. But we found out that there's sort of a wide array of quality of websites. You know, not only, we didn't really look a lot at, you know, the professionalism. We just wanted to make sure that it was understandable and had the information. So we found out that only 7 of the 166 municipalities that we surveyed had all of these 13 elements. 2 of the municipalities had an F+, meaning they had a website and just one of the elements. As you can see, 42 municipalities either did not have a website or had a website and didn't meet any of these criteria, which, you know, it should be an alarming sign. We were pleased to see that the bulk of our communities scored in, you know, C+, B, low A range, meaning they had most of these. So, you know, communities aren't doing bad. On average, the average rural Utah community scored a C, which is 7 out of the 13 criteria. So we want to go into some of the more positive trends. 95% of the communities that we looked at had their contact information for City Hall. 73% of the municipalities with websites had the contact information for their elected officials. They were able to contact the mayor and the city council. 71% had their public meetings posted, their agendas and their minutes, so you were able to track the city business. Related to that, there is, all municipalities are required as well to file their minutes and their agendas, well, all public bodies really, with the state website. So we tracked it to see if either they hosted it on-site or they provided a link to the state website, and 71% of communities did that. Lastly, 91% of municipalities showed up on that first page of a web search. Again, there were plenty of opportunities for confusion with other websites, but we were glad to see that they were usually within the top 4 results, so rarely would you go past that, at least in my experience. And so we were pretty pleased to see that. Some of the negative trends we saw had to do with transparency, with the Government Records and Management Act request information. So very few communities, in fact only 33% of the websites that we assessed had the information to request government documents, which was sort of alarming to us. We want the public to be able to access public information, and these municipalities weren't really along those same lines. 38% had working search features, and having surveyed them, I can tell you that most of these websites need those search features. It's very difficult to find information otherwise. And what was most disheartening to me, since I do a lot of financial analysis as part of my work, is only 25% of the websites we surveyed had that financial info, the most recent financial statements and the current city budget on that, or again, provided a link to the state auditor's website that also contains that information. There's the saying that you can tell a town's priority by looking at its budget. They put their money where they want, where in the areas they feel is important. And as a citizen or as a, state agency or any other interested party, it's very difficult to identify what the city wants to do and how they operate without being able to identify their financial information to see what they've done in the past and what their future holds. So the report that we've conducted, we'll go through and discuss all this more in depth. It's in draft form currently. We're having it reviewed. But our next steps would be to expand the criteria and do a follow-up study is what we'd have planned. There are many useful features to websites that communities scored. This wasn't to say all towns had terrible websites. There are many useful things like utility pay, being able to access the rec league information or the city newsletter. Those are all useful things, but that we didn't look at. We want to expand that more to include some of those more useful but not necessarily urgent things, as well as more business development resources on the website. One of the next steps is state assistance to rural municipalities for websites. As we've talked with rural municipalities, a lot of them don't have the resources or the expertise to put these websites together. Some of the wealthier, larger communities, for instance, Vernal is one of the larger of the rural communities, has a very nice website. Roosevelt has a nice website. They also had the funds and the staff on hand to be able to take care of that. When you have part-time staff, part-time municipal leaders with very small budgets, it's difficult for them to put together municipal or professional resources for their municipality. That's not to say they're incapable, it's just to say they're not there yet, and they need some guidance there. They need some coaching in order to arrive at that point. And that's sort of what sparked this presentation. As we brought this initiative and brought this report to Kelly's attention, we thought this may be an opportunity for future partnership and some future work with our organizations as well as DTS, GOED, the regional AOGs and counties and economic development officers. The next step after that, the last step and our final goal is to encourage the adoption of functional, transparent, and informative rural websites for these municipalities. Rural Utah doesn't want to be forgotten, and they won't be forgotten. Change is going to come to them whether they want it or not, in some form or another. And a functional and useful website that portrays their information accurately the way they want it to will help these communities prepare for their own future and take control of the growth and change that they want to occur in their communities. As private parties, we hadn't put a lot of thought into how they can cooperate, but we definitely feel that there is a role there. These municipalities don't need top-down from the state to tell them their website needs to look at this. Again, we were, as a rural planning group, we're advisors rather than regulators. But we'd encourage best practices. But I think, people who are on the ground working with these municipalities on code, on utilities, on development, have more valuable insight on the development of these websites, on what is useful and what solutions can be provided to them.
One thing that I was wondering, on the criteria, I don't think you put, did you put, like, any tourism resources? Because I think, you know, one of the things is you all want people visiting your communities, you know, to a certain degree, I'm sure, and just attracting people into different areas of the state for economic development purposes, especially to have, you know, tourism for businesses and things. That might be something to sort of look through. I know the tourism office has done some work with different cities trying to get them to brand themselves a little bit better. So that might be part of this. You know, that might be kind of a 2.0 kind of thing.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And
That
part of
was
the
sort of
economic
what we had planned for the
portion of
next,
it.
sort of the next phase, is more of this economic development, branding your community. Yeah, I know a lot of the counties have been working with the state, with Roger Brooks as a consultant to sort of help themselves identify the unique. Yeah.
Well, and I'm sure, I mean, EDC Utah has left, but I'm sure, you know, when they're talking to a company and then the company looks up the city and then they get to a city website that's really, really bad, you know, and they're looking for a workforce in that area and stuff, I think it does reflect on the image of the whole community.
Yeah, exactly right.
So any of you that are on your local councils too out in rural Utah, I think a few of you maybe might be, but yeah, this is really interesting, and I think maybe getting a few partners together to kind of to get through more would be really good.
Yeah. All right, are there any other questions?
I have a few, thank you. So just to piggyback on this last comment, do you view the website to be useful for visitors of the community or for residents of the community?
Both. I think it's both, right? Because you're talking about transparency for the citizens, but then users also.
Yeah, certainly, and I think municipalities need to understand that, and they don't always realize that. Frequently, a chamber of commerce will do the tourism, you know, come visit our town, or come visit our county, come visit our area, and the municipality will say, we just need to have a place where you can pay your water bill. You know, we need to have a place where you can see when to sign up your kids for soccer. And really, a website can do both. It can meet both needs. And, you know, if you're visiting a community, you're not only looking for recreation opportunities, but you want to know what are the amenities there. You know, what can this town provide me, especially if you're looking at economic development, and this 25,000 jobs push is going to bring a lot of change and pressure to these communities. If businesses are looking to expand but can't find out any of the necessary information about expanding into a municipality, it's going to be very difficult to, you know, bridge that gap between a business and a municipality. So I think municipal websites can serve both purposes, and that's what we would encourage them as we go into communities.
So with regards to residents, do you think a website is really the first point of contact for rural community residents? I don't think so.
It certainly depends on the community, I would wager. You know, in the smaller communities, again, the ones that were in that those 42 municipalities that perhaps didn't have a website, maybe they don't need them. You know, if you only have 200 people in your town, for instance, maybe a website just isn't for you, and that's going to be okay.
If you need to talk to the mayor, you know who the mayor is. You don't need to look up his phone number on a website. You know,
in some cases, if you're new to town, you may not know who the mayor is. You may not know when they have their meetings if you are looking to bring your business. And if you're in a larger community, you know, there are several communities where, you know, I guess if you are a fifth class, fourth class type of city, you know, you're sort of at that sort of, I don't know, that critical point where you basically know of people in your community, but you may not know everybody in your community.
You mentioned on the transparency discussion that you had, you really kind of focused on the GRAMA, you know, the lack of ability to have GRAMA requests. It would be interesting to find out how many GRAMA requests actually these municipalities ever receive.
Right.
To put it in perspective. And then my last observation is how many of these municipalities have apps? You're website focused, but everything's going to apps, and so wouldn't we have apps, and wouldn't we have a state program that has apps that has all of the municipalities, and you just pick the municipality and go to their
Yeah, that would be a great question. In fact, many other states do that. They host most of this information that I just discussed on a centralized state website that will then link to more information on the local site. And you're exactly right. As technology keeps pace, websites may be left behind, and that's something that, you know, if communities aren't even at the website phase, they may be left even further behind.
Good point, 3 and 4 slides.
Yeah.
I just have a comment on this, and I don't want to upset anybody, but they did this rebranding thing in the rural communities, and I mean, in theory, and it sounds really good when you're in Salt Lake, but if you look at like Emery County, our two big things are the swell and then the bouldering and stuff up the canyon. And so they came down and they said, okay, we need each city to brand itself. So all the cities, and there's like 6 of them right around the swell and right around this bouldering area, they all got this new catchphrase and a new sign outside their town, but they're all 3 or 4 miles apart from each other, and there was no combined marketing. It was just a waste of money. I mean, complete waste of money, and the residents all laugh about it. So that was something pushed from up above, up the state, and really we've always marketed on an area as a county because the Santa Fe's a big desert, you know, and here they came down and pushed this individual community thing. It was a disaster, and really the residents they make fun of it. But that's Castle Del's catchphrase is "Come get dirty with us." What is that? So, anyways, but I just put that as a caution that it is different in rural Utah, right, Douglas? So, but we laugh at it because all the communities down there got their own catchphrase, and so, and they're 2 miles apart, 3 miles apart, and so kind of be aware when we're marketing down there. I think the county level is, and that's where most of the residents go. We go to the county, and there might be a link to look at our the city council agenda, but most of us go to the county site because that's where the rec league's all done through the county, not through the city. The tourism's done through the county because it's a bigger thing, and so I don't say I'm from Castledale. I always say I'm from Emery County, right? Because we associate ourselves with a bigger area down there. So that's just a thought for those who are on the Wasatch Front. No. I mean, you guys are the same up in the basin, right? I mean, you get to each little town, you have a marketing for each little town. I don't know. A little weird, but.
Somebody has there. Can we have people on the phone mute their phones? We're hearing Brock's echo, I think. Okay. Well, I think that's something to consider in the overall strategy.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else have any feedback or questions?
Right.
Delete.
All right, well, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you so much, and we'll have you back for updates. Okay, so our second to last item of business, we have Kobus from the University of Utah, and he actually just called me. Did we talk yesterday or the day before? Very recently, and so we added him to the agenda sort of at the last minute. But he is working on applying for a grant to do a wireless test bed in the Salt Lake area through the University of Utah, and there are some kind of industry ties that would be interesting to this group.
So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you all. So I am a professor up at the U. I do networking, both in terms of what I teach and in my research. And so what I'd like to talk about today is a opportunity that is coming up that we hope to take part in. It is around wireless research broadly, but then more specifically about a wireless research testbed or platform. So it goes by the acronym of POWER, Platform for Advanced Wireless Research. It is part of a much bigger wireless research initiative by NSF. And the POWER part is around $100 million in terms of funding, and the idea is to fund 4 or maybe 5, depending on how things play out, what they call city-scale wireless platforms. So the way you want to think about that is it's a living lab, right? It's something that is out there. It's real in the sense that it has to deal with environmental conditions in buildings and traffic and whatnot. But the goal is not to provide services of any kind. The goal is to provide a platform for researchers to do research. And this is both academic researchers and industry research. So that's the basic idea. We're at the beginning stage of this. The RFP just came out like 2 weeks ago. And these platforms will be rolled out in the next couple of years. Once they are there, there will be additional, I want to say, sort of more regular NSF-style funding to the tune of $400 million to do research on these platforms. So that's kind of the bigger picture. Part of the 100 million, so part of the money, about 50 million, comes from NSF, and then the rest of the money comes from 28 industry consortium partners. That these are companies providing services and equipment in the wireless mobile networking space, and they pledge to be part of this the program, and will be providing in-kind contributions to that. So the basic idea is for cities and universities to team up to build a platform at city scale. Now, city scale is not actually clear. Basically, they want to have density in terms of both wireless users and base stations. The idea with there's also, like I said, this industry part. There's the industry consortium, but there's also an emphasis in the RFP to partner with other industry players. So these might be local companies, it might be non-local companies, but companies that might contribute to either the establishment of a platform or might have a stake in making a platform more interesting. And then, of course, once it's there, the idea is for both companies and academia to be able to use this for their own research purposes. So there is a project, a power project office below that has recently been selected, or relatively recently, and they will kind of manage the process on behalf of NSF, which is why they can move a lot faster. So the RFP came out April 19, and we have a intent to submit the deadline on Monday, and then June 1st there's a preliminary proposal, and end of July there's a full proposal. So for a government, city government agencies are pretty aggressive timelines, and certainly we were a little shocked to see the timelines. I already said 28 companies in part of this wireless, part of the industry consortium, and they're going to provide in-kind contribution. The exact details of that is not clear, and they have in their RFP a little page where they say, oh, services, equipment, but not exactly clear what they will be providing. Kind of interesting from a process point of view. If you make it into the finalist stage, there will be some sort of a matching activity that happens as part of a site visit. So they'll come here and say, oh, well, you said in your proposal you're going to use this kind of equipment. Look over here in our industry consortium, we have someone that can provide something similar. How about you use that? So there seems to be a lot of sort of horse trading that will be going on. And the industry is involved because they can make use of this platform. Right? And so a big challenge for us as we think about building this platform is, well, how do we build a thing that is useful for people who want to do research, both from industry and academia? That's really the biggest challenge. All right. So the city, the city is a key enabler for city scale. I kind of said about what they mean with city scale already, and the expectations here of why would a city take part in this are along the lines of economic development, being seen to be an innovative city. There is this parallel deployment of city services and research platform, right? So the platform we're going to build is not meant to provide services to citizens. But if you build that infrastructure out, it seems pretty obvious that you can sort of leverage that for additional city kind of things. There's also a touch point where while the platform is meant to enable wireless research in the first place, there's also a touch point for things like broader research agendas like IoT or smart city or connected health. So these might broader research ideas that might leverage off of a platform like this. And so we're sort of in the process of trying to wrap our heads around what does that exactly mean? Because the emphasis in the first place is wireless research, but then there is this broader agenda as well. Yeah, so smart city might be sort of one of the angles there. So why do we think we can play? So the group I'm with, I'm a director of the Flux Research Group, and what we do is we build test beds. So we have a bunch of test beds out there. Emilab was a networking research test bed that existed for a long time. We have a Cloud Lab, is a test bed to enable cloud research. And then more to the point here, we have a test bed called PhantomNet, which is a mobile and wireless networking test bed. So we have expertise in building test beds, and then we do our own research in the space too. So we feel like we have a reasonable shot at this, and then we have external local partners. Right? So we are teaming up with a city. We are expecting to team up with UEN or UETN in a big way, and looking at other potential local partners as well. Right, so there's basically two components, if you will, to what would go into this proposal. The first one is this infrastructure, and I'm going to talk about that in a second, but the key thing here is that it has to be flexible. Right? We're looking at like a 5-year time frame to enable research. Well, I don't know what research is going to look like in 5 years. So you want to have an infrastructure that is not tied to a specific technology or a specific research area to type in. Right? And that's a really big challenge. And then the second part, or related to that, is, well, from our point of view, we need to be very clear about what specific research areas that we think we can support. So in the RFP, they list like a dozen or more. We're not expected to cover all of those, but we do think we can cover some of them. So here are sort of a subset of what I think we will probably be covering. Issues around spectrum sensing and measurement, dynamic spectrum use. There's a lot of work going on in terms of being able to use spectrum way more effectively than what we're using today. So some of you in the know might know about the 3.5 gigahertz band, for example. They have a sort of a tiered model where there's an incumbent, and then tier 2 and tier 3, and the idea is that you can sort of opportunistically use that spectrum if the incumbent is not using it. Right? So there's a lot of work in that space. We do a lot of work ourselves in mobile communication architecture, so that's something we'll cover. And then wireless networking, security and privacy is also something that we have a strength in. So this is kind of my cartoonish picture of what the platform itself might look like. So if you think about that, the first thing, well, is meant to do wireless, right? So, well, you're going to have handsets, and you want to have those handsets move around. How do we do that? How do you do that in a test? So basically, the plan is, and it's not normal, I mean, other test beds have done the same thing, but the idea is you have some sort of a carrier, right, like a bus or a track vehicle, and you would put some test bed equipment on there, and essentially that would move around with it, and that's your handset. Okay? Or, I mean, there's been ideas of doing this on bikes, like, for example, the green bike system that we have in the city. Now, if you think about that, it's going to be way more interesting because, things actually move around way more realistically, whereas a bus might go on a certain route, and you probably want both of those in a testbed environment. But if you have it on a bike, well, I don't know, a bike might get stolen, and you want to think about power and what exactly exactly how you're going to package it. So lots of issues around that, which I don't think we know how to solve. And then basically you have base stations, right? And so this is where we're hoping to partner with the city in terms of getting access to real estate to do that. And then this is where when you guys come in, we need backhaul, right? We want to, from those wireless base stations, we want to go to what I called here some edge compute facility. So think of that as sort of a small data center that might be close to the edge. There's a lot of work in the space around ideas like Cloud RAN, where you have your front end is basically just what do they call it, remote radio head, and you do the baseband processing in the cloud environment, so that would facilitate that. We're talking really low latency here with pretty high capacity links going there. And then going up from that, you know, a more conventional data center. And so as I go up in the figure, most of these other pieces we have a pretty good handle on, right? So we have, of course, the university have the downtown data center. We have infrastructure there that we will tie in with. We will also tie in with our existing PhantomNet testnet at the U, and then we have part of our other testnet facilities in other places in Wisconsin and Clemson and now in Rutgers as well. So this is sort of just big picture architecture-wise. So it's just, you know, to give you an idea of how we think of this mobility. So there's the University of Utah IT department recently moved to a downtown location. There's a shuttle that runs this about every 15 minutes, right? So you can imagine putting devices on buses that drive this route, and now we get this predictable mobility. Yep, it's gonna go down that path every 15 minutes, and we kind of know what to expect, and it's one way of doing it. And so here it's just sort of a very initial map of if we were to put base stations at these locations, the kind of coverage we've so that's where we are. We are looking for partners. Like I said, we expect to partner with the city and with UETN very heavily. So I do think they will be our main partners. But we're also looking for companies that might later on be interested to use this for research, so use case ideas in terms of what they might want to do with that, or technology companies that might have something to offer in terms of building the infrastructure, or maybe in that category of the broader impact in terms of, oh, yeah, I'm not necessarily in that space, but you know, doing something like a smart city type application that could be prototyped on something like this as a program activity. So thank you for that.
I don't know. It's like it wasn't doing that before. Does anybody have any questions? And you're free to contact him after to ask anything that you need to. He's trying to get this done really quickly. It's a really short time frame.
So, thank you much.
Okay. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, sorry. HDMI. So we're going to go to our map of the month.
Okay, I'll try and make this really quick because I know we're all ready to go to lunch. The map of the month for April is actually Kelly contacted us and she said, hey, can you guys give us any kind of an idea for how locate.utah.gov is being used around the state? And, you know, my first response is, well, we've got Google Analytics on it, so, you know, we know about, you know, the basics, right, like how often it's being hit, and page views, and how long people are staying on the site. And then I thought about it for a little bit, and I said, wait a minute. And I talked a little bit about this at the Broadband Summit. the locate.utah.gov site. And whenever you zoom in or pan on the map, the application is actually requesting new base map tiles. And the server that we have at AGRC that provides those base map tiles logs every single transaction. And we know what application is using these base map tiles in the background at what scale. And I was like, well, that could be kind of cool. And we'd never pulled it for any of the state or local government applications that use the base map services. And it's just something, a benefit that we hadn't really thought about for that platform. So we pulled all the logs for locate.utah.gov, going back through July when we hooked it up to this new technology for serving the base map. And we put together two maps, and the first one is a heat map showing where people have been looking at the locate.utah.gov site at the community level or lower. And, you know, no surprises there, but the red is pulling, you know, is a square kilometer where 20,000 base map tiles have been pulled. So when you're looking at the map, it might, you know, on this side screen, it might pull a dozen or so base maps every time you zoom or pan. Make a dozen or so requests for base map tiles every time you zoom or pan. So, like, the raw numbers aren't as important because they kind of overinflate the use, but the relative numbers, I think, are really interesting for where folks are using the service. And then we also pulled a similar map where folks are looking at, like, the neighborhood level, where they might be looking at an individual site. This distribution is also pretty interesting. The first thing that leapt out at me is someone in Moab. Someone who's either interested in moving a business to Moab, or maybe their economic development person has been really active, and also the same thing for Davis County. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So yeah, the blog post is called Where for locate.utah.gov. The second map, I'm going pretty quickly, is where we looked at the server logs and we could figure out where reports were being generated. And in version 1 of locate.utah.gov, the reports take about 15 seconds to generate, and you can do them for any spot on the map. And I thought it would be good to get a good baseline for where reports were being generated. This is about a little under 500 reports for the first quarter of 2017 around the state. Again, generalized, sort of probably a couple of square mile type situation here. But when we move to this new soft launch version of locate.utah.gov, then you're going to have the same capability, but you're also going to have the ability to click on the Sure sites and get an instant report for the Sure site. So I thought having a baseline would be interesting to compare going forward and seeing to what degree people are generating custom reports versus looking at the Sure sites. And you know, I think at some level, you know, if one of those mega site type opportunities gets influenced by this, it's probably done its job. But it's also interesting to look at the numbers and the distribution and get a feel for that, and maybe that will influence. In fact, Kelly has said it will influence how they will market the site out to the site selectors, but also to economic development folks in the county around the state.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned this earlier, but like one of the enhancements that we did, I felt this way for a long time, that generate report button was sort of hidden in the corner, and now like every time you click it, it actually shows up right on the pin that you click on. And I'm curious, looking at baseline, seeing if we improve our report numbers just by how we've changed the functionality a little bit. And I actually think it's going to help because I talk to people on the phone, and as I walk them through, I say, oh, and you can generate a report, and they say, oh, you can, and I say, yes, you can, and then I show them where the button is. But now that the button's right where they're clicking, I think it's gonna be a good enhancement on that.
Hopefully, we're getting to perfection in the second iteration, but
yeah. And you saw we moved the menu on the other side too, which was I think it's a little bit more readable. I think your eye goes there a little bit more. So we're we're just kind of looking at the usability to see how we can improve it.
So, we haven't got to the May, map of the month yet, does anyone know what National Space Day is today? May the 4th.
Yes, it is.
So it's early in the month, but we'll have one, we've got our state GIS conference up in Park City next week, so after that, we'll have the May, map of the month published. But I invite you to read this, on Kelly's website. It's a little write-up describing what we did. It was so cool to have this opportunity to discover this hidden functionality of the service that we're providing out to cities and counties and state agencies and websites and that kind of thing. So, had a good time with it.
Yeah, it's cool. I'm glad that we could do it. I wasn't sure if that was something that could be pulled off.
It was a happy.
I just come up with problems.
Yeah,
do it for can do it.
Category of happy accident.
Happy accident.
Yeah, we can do that.
Sweet. Okay, cool. Does anybody have any other announcements before we close the meeting? We're a few minutes over. Last time we were really early, so we're just kind of making up for letting you guys out early last time. Anything else that we need to cover? And thanks again for coming out. And then, just as a quick note, I'm out of the country for the next 3 weeks, and I'm going to be really hard to access. So if you need anything, just leave me a message, and I'll get back to you sometime. Call Bert if it's really bad.
What you're up to?
Yeah, so I'm finishing my MBA, and I'm going on the trip. So we're going through Asia. So it's going to be hard. And I'm going to Prague next week too. So, but I can get back to you eventually. But if there's an emergency, and if it's go at emergency, Ginger. But a lot of the broadband stuff, Bert might at this point know.
As people are walking out, one last thing. We also just posted on the Kelly site an update for the provider data submissions from March. We've got them all processed. They should be all on the residential broadband map and in locate where we got updates for that. So thank you for everyone for continuing to work with it. And that, data submission process.